Incumbent Democratic Senator Tim Kaine is about to debate his Republican challenger Corey Stewart in Virginia's Senate race.
This is a News 4 special presentation. Decision 2018, the race for U.S. Senate in Virginia. Democratic Senator Tim Kaine and Republican challenger Corey Stewart face off in a televised debate before the high-stakes November election. Live from Capital One headquarters in McLean, here's NBC News political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd.
And good evening. I'm Chuck Todd, and welcome to the Virginia senatorial debate between Democratic incumbent Senator Tim Kaine and the Republican nominee, the chairman of the Prince William County Board of Supervisors, Corey Stewart. And it's made possible by the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University, and the Northern Virginia Technology Council, and of course, NBC4. This debate is airing on NBC stations across the Commonwealth, nationally on C-SPAN, and streaming live on NBCWashington.com. Let me begin by quickly covering the rules of today's event. The debate will last 1 hour and will begin with 90-second opening statements from each candidate. Then our panelists and myself will pose questions directly to the candidates. I should note, these questions are determined by NBC News and the panelists and have not been reviewed by the candidates or any of the debate partners that you will see involved in this debate. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond, and the candidate answering first will have an additional 30-second rebuttal. And as moderator, I do reserve the right to follow up as needed. And finally, we will conclude the debate with 60-second closing statements. There's a timekeeper who will notify candidates of their remaining time when time has expired. In the interest of trying to cover as much ground as possible, we ask you guys to try to keep to the time limits. I don't like being a school marm, trust me. So now let me welcome our panelists. Aaron Gilchrist, he anchors News 4 Today, weekday mornings on NBC4. He spent 20 years covering Virginia, both here and in Richmond. Julie Carey is News 4's Northern Virginia bureau chief and has been covering Virginia politics for NBC4 for more than 20 years. And Dr. Mark Rozelle is dean of the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University and has been writing and commenting on Virginia politics for over 30 years. And so now, let me introduce the candidates. Republican nominee, the Prince William County Board of Supervisor Chairman, Corey Stewart. Thank you. And the Democratic incumbent, Senator Tim Kaine. And as determined by a coin toss, Chairman Stewart, you have the first 90 seconds to yourself.
Well, thank you very much, Chuck, and thank you all for hosting this debate today. I want to also thank my wife of 24 years, my wife Maria, and our two sons, Isaac and Luke, for their support. The United States Senate is broken. They're not talking with one another. They're yelling at each other. Republicans blaming Democrats, Democrats blaming Republicans, and nothing is getting done, including with Senator Kaine. Because Senator Kaine is an automatic no to everything that President Trump proposes. He's bitter about 2016. When the president proposed increasing our military budget, rebuilding our military, Senator Kaine voted no. When the president proposed increasing the pay for our military staff, Senator Kaine voted no. When President Trump proposed increasing the modest housing allowance for our military, Senator Kaine voted no. And when the president successfully fought for a tax cut for all of you, Senator Kaine voted no. Senator Kaine votes no on everything. I, on the other hand, have a long track record of 12 years in the second largest locality in Virginia, the most diverse locality in Northern Virginia, of actually getting things done. Working across party lines, working across racial lines, working across ethnic lines to drop taxes, to rebuild our public safety, to build schools and roads, and that is why I ask for your vote on November 6th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Senator Kaine, your 90 seconds.
Thank you all for doing this. I want to thank the sponsors, Capital One, for hosting. I'm thrilled to be joined by my wife, Ann, my son, Nat, and my daughter-in-law, Carly. And I'm especially thrilled to be joined by special friend, longtime friend, former Senator John Warner. John, we are proud, very, very proud of your service to this Commonwealth. Look, elections are about choices, and there is a clear choice that Virginians face in November. It comes down to our very campaign themes. I'm running on an upbeat theme, a Virginia that works for all. My opponent is running on an angry and divisive theme, take Virginia back. Opportunity for all has been my hallmark in my 34 years in Virginia as a civil rights lawyer and elected official. And I'm proud to work with senators of both parties and administrations of both parties to get things done. Expanding medical research, building a 355-ship Navy to create Virginia jobs and keep us safe, fighting to the scourge of opioid addiction, battling campus sexual assault, recognizing Virginia tribes, all accomplishments of the kind that I'll continue to work on. But Corey's lived his theme too, the divisive theme, bitter attacks on immigrant communities, trafficking with bizarre conspiracy theories challenging President Obama's birth certificate, championing white supremacists and folks like Roy Moore, the failed Senate candidate in Alabama. The themes could not be different. Do we want a Virginia that works for all, or do we want to take Virginia back? That's what's at stake on November 6th, and I look forward to discussing that with you.
All right, thank you both. Pretty good on keeping the time already. Let's see if we keep it up for the rest of the hour. Mr. Stewart.
We'll try. We're just
all right, I want to begin with you and the big story, obviously, that's taking place in the nation's capital. There are now multiple accusations against the Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh. Tomorrow, we're going to hear from a woman by the name of Christine Blasey Ford. She has brought the most significant accusation against him. You dismissed the allegation due to its timing as a smear tactic. Is there anything that she or Judge Kavanaugh could say tomorrow that could make you change your mind about her accusation?
You know, here's the thing. It's a circus up there. This is beneath the dignity of the United States Senate. And it's not just the Democrats, it's the Republicans as well. That needs to end. Dragging America through this horrible spectacle in the United States Senate. And who's doing it? 100 in the United States Senate, 435 in the House are just as guilty from my perspective. But here's what they're doing. They spent $17 million to quash accusations of sexual harassment against them. And now they're going after Judge Kavanaugh and 36-year-old allegations from when he was in high school. Who are they to judge? Who are they to judge? 268 separate allegations of sexual harassment, sexual assault, and other misdeeds by the United States Senate, and they're covering it up.
Senator Kaine.
Let me tell you what is beneath dignity. Corey, when Dr. Ford came out with her allegations, you said they were, quote, a bunch of crap. You waited a day, and then you tweeted this out. What's next? Will someone find that Judge Kavanaugh pulled a girl's pigtails in first grade? There is no equivalence between pulling a girl's pigtails and an allegation that two 17-year-olds barricaded a 15-year-old girl in a bedroom and sexually assaulted her. And to minimize the seriousness of these allegations, now 4 accusers, and you are going after the accusers, as you always do, trying to demean them. We have young people watching us tonight. We have people watching us who have suffered from sexual assault or are suffering from it. They need to know that if they bring forward a charge, we want to help them. We will take them seriously. We will get to the bottom of the charge. They don't need to be shut down by the kind of name-calling that you have done against Dr. Ford.
30 seconds, Mr. Stewart.
Talk about demeaning women. What about the $17 million that you paid in hush money to the 268 separate complaints, Senator, against you and other members of the United States Congress? And that didn't happen 36 years ago. That happened as late as last year. Senators like Al Franken and others, and he's gone, thankfully, but there's others. How come you won't release the list? How come you won't release the list of all of these allegations and the senators and the members of the House that sexually harassed women for whom you paid $17 million in hush money to shut them up?
Go ahead, I'll give you 30 seconds to respond.
You just tried to slip in that there were complaints against me, and that is completely false.
Well, how do we know
when
that?
you talk about this beneath dignity, oh, so you just think you can make it up without any facts?
Well, who's making things up? I think that's the Democrats
in the Senate, I have been working to reform what is an antiquated policy to make it better, and I have been the one that forced the Senate Ethics Committee to release the information about these settlements that have been paid. Any settlement that's been paid, the facts should be out on the table, and I've been on the forefront of that.
All right, let me move to a separate Supreme Court question for you, Senator Kaine. I want to start with you. Not only do you oppose Brett Kavanaugh, you've made that clear, but you voted against Neil Gorsuch. Doesn't your opposition to Gorsuch prove that that you're making an ideological decision over a basic qualification decision when it comes to Supreme Court nominees?
I'm glad to talk about Justice Gorsuch. Here's what I do when the Supreme Court nominee is out there. I read everything that they've written, law review articles, judicial opinions. I have them come to my office, I look them in the eye, and I ask them about the questions that I have. I wait till the hearing is over in the Judiciary Committee, and then based on all of that, I make a decision. I've appointed judges to the Virginia Supreme Court. I've tried cases in all courts, including the Supreme Court. I take this very seriously. With Justice Gorsuch, I was extremely concerned when I read opinions of his that he had a habit of going out of his way to be an activist judge on one particular topic: women's freedom to make their own health care decisions. Again and again, a justice who said he was an umpire would go out of his way to be a judicial activist. I didn't think we needed him on the court. But what I did was I did my homework. You don't see me coming out of the gate and trashing somebody or calling them a name before I even know the facts. I'm going to do my homework before I reach a decision.
60 seconds, Mr. Stewart.
Well, it's not just Judge Gorsuch, and it's not just Judge Kavanaugh. It's 17 appointments by the President of the United States to his cabinet and other appointments that Tim Kaine automatically votes no. And when I said this, and by the way, PolitiFact, which is a left-leaning media organization which is not a friend of mine and certainly not a friend of most Republicans, even they said it was true. Tim Kaine votes automatically against the President of the United States. When the President wanted to reduce taxes, he voted no. When the President wanted to improve the salaries for our military, you voted no. When the President wanted to build our 355-ship Navy, you voted no.
I
and
wrote
now you're
that
lying
bill.
about it. I'm not done. And you did
I wrote
this.
that bill, Corey.
You voted against it on January the 19th, Senator. People can see through this. You're bitter about 2016. You're voting against every single thing that President Trump does. Even in doing so, you hurt Virginia and Virginians.
Let's have the whole debate rest on that. Have I voted against everything that President Trump has done? I voted for many of President Trump's nominees, many of them. President Trump has signed about 17 pieces of legislation that I have written. He has signed 6 pieces of legislation that I have written since we last debated at the Homestead. I'm going to advance with President Trump everywhere we can: career and technical education, recognizing Virginia Indian tribes, battling opioids. But I'm going to defend the values of the country and the Commonwealth when I need to.
Very quickly, would you have voted to confirm Justice Roberts or Justice Alito, the last 2 Republican nominees before these two?
You know what? I would do the same thing I've done on these. I would sit down. I would read everything.
You don't want to say?
I have a big one on my head right now. We have a huge decision about the Supreme Court that we need to make right now, and I have declared where I am on Judge Kavanaugh.
All right, Julie Carey has the next question.
And this is to you, Mr. Stewart. Let me turn to the topic of transportation. President Trump, as you know, had promised a massive job-creating, road and bridge-fixing infrastructure plan that would benefit Virginia and other states. It has gone nowhere in Washington. Now, the president says he is a deal maker. Where do you think he went wrong on this? And if elected, would you be in favor of direct federal funding for Virginia projects?
Well, yes, I would. And, you know, something, when Tim Kaine here was running for governor, and he came from a local background. I thought, well, you know, he's a Democrat, but I can work with him. He comes from a local background. Maybe he's going to be reasonable. He campaigned in 2005 about rebuilding the infrastructure, especially here in Northern Virginia. Do you know how much infrastructure got built under his watch? 0. Not a single nickel for transportation, road construction, or anything else got done in Virginia when he was governor. And now in his 6 years in the United States Senate, not a single nickel for Virginia infrastructure. We're still stuck in gridlock in Northern Virginia and in Hampton Roads and across this state because he didn't get the job done in his 10 years as governor and in the United States Senate. 10 years. What a missed opportunity. And all that he did on transportation is give away the Dulles Toll Road and shut down the rest stops.
Senator Kaine, 60 seconds.
Well, if you walk out of this building, there's something called the Silver Line that you will see right when you walk out. That's something. I mean, that is something. When I came in as governor, that was on a drawing board, and it had been for 20 years. And I told my Secretary of Transportation, for the good of this economy, we're going to have that thing under construction by the time I'm done. And we had the Silver Line under construction to Wheelie Avenue. And as a senator, I've worked to get the funding to Dulles and beyond. We did hot lanes on the Beltway. You can also see those, Corey, if you walk right out of this building. Hot lanes down through Prince William. You can see the extension if you go in your own county. I worked on all of those projects. We could do transportation in Washington if the president would quit trying to repeal everybody's health care. If he decided to devote to infrastructure what he has devoted to taking away the health care of millions and millions of people, we could do a transportation bill. But you are cheering him on at every occasion, take health care away from millions. Let's do turn to transportation.
30 seconds, Mr. Stewart.
There you go. Blaming the Republicans, blaming the president, blaming everybody else, getting nothing done. And now he's trying to take credit for what Governor McDonnell got accomplished. Do you know what happened? When he was governor, he tried to raise taxes 4 times. The Republicans wouldn't go along with it. Not even the Democrats would go along with tax hike Tim over here. So here's what he did. He shut down the rest stops just out of pure spite. And now we have $40 tolls both ways on I-66 because he refused to do his job.
Aaron Gilchrist has the next question.
Senator Kaine, when asked in the August 2018 NBC News Wall Street Journal poll what concerns them most about Democrats gaining control of Congress, gridlock was the top answer. If Democrats do regain control, would you work to block President Trump's agenda or lead Democrats to work toward compromise?
What a great question. My goal will be to do what I have been doing. With 2 Republican houses, I've gotten a lot of legislation to President Trump's desk, battling opioids, recognizing Virginia Indian tribes. I wrote the bill to expand the Navy to 355 ships and got that through to create jobs and to increase our national security. So I'm going to continue to do what I have been doing in my 6 years in the Senate. I am one of the senators that's always working across the aisle to try to find partnerships to get bills to President Obama and now to President Trump, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. But if the president proposes things that are bad, sure, I'll stand up against them. If they're bad for Virginia, if they're bad for the country, I'm going to stand up against them. What we need to see is we need to see people who know how to work together across the aisle. That's not what my opponent does. One of the last times we were together, he looked at all the Democrats at the Buena Vista Parade and called them all socialists. You can't call the other side names and then expect to get work done with them.
Mr. Stewart.
He's going to do what he's been doing for the last 6 years. That means nothing's going to get done, folks. Nothing. He talks about working across the party aisle, but all you've heard from tonight is blaming the other side, blaming President Trump, blaming the Republicans. That's what he did as governor. He said there was no money left for transportation in Virginia. And then when Governor Bob McDonnell was elected governor, he comes in there, and my predecessor, Sean Connaughton, chairman of director of VDOT, did an audit. And you know what they found out? That his administration was sitting on $1 billion worth of road improvement money. He wouldn't spend it. He wouldn't spend it on road construction. He kept it hidden. And therefore, we finally started to get some road projects moving in Virginia after he was out of office. But in the United States Senate, he's gotten nothing done. He wants to take credit for the 355-ship Navy? You mean the one that you voted against on January 19th?
30 seconds.
I wrote the bill and I helped get a budget deal done to fund a 355-ship Navy in March. It's a great budget deal, 18 months. Corey Stewart said to President Trump, please veto that bill. Veto the bill that funds the Navy. Veto the bill that increases pay to our troops. Look, it is about working across the aisle. And that's why when I was governor in a tough time, I was able to do it so that we were the best managed state in America, best state for business every year, best state to raise a child. But under your watch, Corey,
Senator, I have a
per pupil spending going to the bottom in the region while class sizes are going up, slashing the county health department.
Time is up on that question very quickly. If Democrats take control of Congress, particularly the House. Impeachment inquiry apparently might begin. How are you going to work across the aisle if House Democrats are working on impeachment? And do you think they should be working on impeachment?
I think the I word that we have to focus on, and we differ on this, is investigation. We need to protect the Mueller investigation, protect it so that it can pursue any evidence of criminal culpability by anyone, but also to tell the story about what happened so we can protect our election. I don't think you should be jumping to the conclusion before the investigation's done. And in this, Chuck, I differ from my opponent. My opponent has called the Mueller investigation a witch hunt again and again. He said that it needs to be terminated. Okay. That would be a disaster.
Since you invoked him, I'll give you 30 seconds to respond on that quick question, and then we're going to move back to the panel.
Well, I think you just heard what he's going to do. If you re-elect Tim Kaine, if the Democrats take control of the United States Senate, you know what you're going to find? You're going to find absolutely nothing's going to get accomplished. They're going to totally stop the president's agenda of making the tax cuts permanent. You're going to find a total stop on rebuilding the military, supporting our veterans, building the wall for security at our border. Dianne Feinstein is going to be chairman of the Judiciary Committee. How many of the president's appointments will get through then? Bernie Sanders will be the chairman of the Budget Committee. How much good policy is going to be accomplished with a socialist in charge of the United States Senate Budget Committee?
Thank you, sir. Mark Rozelle with the next question.
Mr. Stewart, in my conversations with Virginia Republicans, including recently former Delegate David Ramadan, they have mentioned the two Corey Stewarts. The one Corey Stewart who entered Virginia politics as a pro-business, pro-establishment figure, and the other Corey Stewart who has made immigration and Confederate statues his focus. Ramadan tells me he thinks the second Corey Stewart is an act. Is he right? And who is the real Corey Stewart?
You know why some of these Republicans are supporting him? Because they know he won't change anything in the United States Senate. I will. I will stir things up, and they know it. That's the difference. Now, the thing is, in Prince William County, yes, I stirred things up. I had to twist a few arms, maybe even break a few to get things done. But I got things done. In my term as chairman, we hired hundreds of new firefighters, hundreds of new police, thousands of new teachers, built billions of dollars worth of new roads and schools and parks. And the way I got that done was not through partisanship. It was by working with Democrats and Republicans. In fact, the closest one on my board that I work with most closely is a Democrat. I can get things done. Yes, I can be controversial, and I can stir things up, and I will in the U.S. Senate because it needs it. But at the end of the day, I can work with everybody to get things accomplished.
Senator Kaine, 60 seconds.
Well, you say now you'll work with everybody, but look, the people who know you best are the Republican supervisor who served with you on the Prince William board. They've worked with you for years. When you ran for governor in 2017 in a primary, not a single one of your Republican colleagues on the board of Prince William supervisors would support you. Not one. One stayed neutral, and all of the others decided to support a Fairfax guy who had never held public office, Ed Gillespie, over you. When the people who know you best look at what you've done in your county and say, we definitely don't want to have that at the state level, I think all Virginians should pay attention to that. Driving per pupil spending down to the lowest in the region while class sizes were going up, trying to eliminate the county health department and slashing health spending, cutting gang prevention funding, crime stats lagging behind the state average. That's been your record in Prince William, and that's why your own Republican colleagues wouldn't support you.
You're insulting my county of Prince William County, Senator, and I'm not going to tolerate it. During the last 12 years, we have worked together, and it wasn't all me. I worked together with folks to get things done. We have a larger road building program in Prince William County than they do in Fairfax County, and we're less than one-half the size. We have put an additional $80 million toward our schools to keep up with this growth. We have over 90 schools, over 95,000 kids in our schools. Our kids in our schools are good. You would have people believe that they're not good schools. You're insulting our school teachers. We've been hiring thousands of new teachers, hundreds of, and partly because you got nothing done as governor, we've had to fend for ourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Julie has
Senator
the next question.
Kaine, I want to ask you about something our colleagues at Telemundo 44 have covered extensively. Democratic activists and even some of your colleagues are calling for ICE, the agency in charge of immigration and customs enforcement, to be abolished. My question is twofold. One, what is your view of that position? And two, where would you draw the line on ICE enforcement?
The problem with our immigration laws is not the agencies or the people, it's the policies. We have not done immigration reform in this country since 1986, and it's well past time to do comprehensive immigration reform. I was proud to be part of a sizable bipartisan coalition in 2013 to do an immigration reform that was about path to citizenship, border security, visa reform, comprehensive reform, bipartisan, went to the House, House did nothing. This is one of the things, Chuck, that if the House goes Democratic, I think we can put this bill on the president's desk. What I won't do is lead in immigration and always demonize immigrants like my opponent does. Again and again and again, he takes a hard anti-immigrant line in a way that has really brought controversy to his county and made it more difficult for Prince William to attract some of the businesses that when I was governor were always choosing to come to Fairfax rather than Prince William.
Stewart.
I don't think the senator, and this is the problem, he understands the difference between an illegal alien and an immigrant to this country. That's what he doesn't understand. I love immigrants. My wife is an immigrant. I'm hosting 3 foreign exchange students in my home right now because I love the cultural diversity. I love that. But we have to enforce our laws. Last year, Nabra Hassanin, coming back from the mosque, she's 16 years old, killed by an illegal alien. A couple of weeks ago, a 4-year-old in Chesterfield, killed by an illegal alien. How many kids have to die, Senator, before you agree to secure the border?
I'm the only one on this stage who's voted for border security multiple times. The problem with Corey's approach is on immigration, he always leads with crime and the bad stuff. I look at immigration as fundamentally about innovation and opportunity. We're at Capital One. Capital One was co-founded by Nigel Morris, an immigrant. We have sponsors here whose tables, when we sit down at board meetings, Sudhakar Shenoy, Long Nguyen, these immigrants who have come to our country, built businesses, invested in Virginia, invested in America, hired people. Do we have to deal with crime? Yes, and I was a crime-fighting mayor and a crime-fighting governor, but we're not going to make our society better by demonizing immigrants.
Mr. Stewart, before we move on, the president almost cut a deal with his friends Chuck and Nancy, if you remember back in the fall of 17. Essentially, DACA, deferred childhood, deferred action, getting the DACA kids essentially citizenship in exchange for the wall. He briefly supported that idea. Could you have supported that in a compromise immigration bill?
We have to enforce the law. You have to enforce the law.
That means no DACA kids.
No, because, you know, let me say something about DACA. You say, well, these kids came in here when, when they were young. You know, one of these kids that came in here when they were young killed a nun in Prince William County in 2010. My job as an elected official on the local level and when I'm on the federal level is to protect you and your families and your rights. It's not to look after people who are trying to come across the country illegally.
What a smear against dreamers. What a smear. There's 14,000 dreamers in Virginia, and Corey's going to talk about a horrible case. Crime should be prosecuted, but for you, again, to smear immigrants and smear dreamers by focusing on crime instead of workforce and opportunity in this wonderful state that has been so benefited by new American talent, that just shows this Take Back Virginia theme that you're running on. It's angry and it's divisive. And what we need as leaders, especially in this moment, who are upbeat and positive and inclusive.
Gentlemen, you get a break. We're going to take a quick pause here for a brief commercial break. We want to remember. So we will continue. Senator Kaine, I have the next question here. Let the music keep going there. It's all right. We would really keep it lively, right? We just keep moving. There is a proposal to rename the Russell Senate Office Building. Right now it's named after the late Senator Richard Russell of Georgia, who, while a big New Dealer with FDR, was an advocate of white supremacy. The proposal would take his name off and replace it with John McCain, who of course passed away last month. If it came up for a vote, How would you vote? For Russell or for McCain?
I'd vote to name the building after John McCain, absolutely. Now, I think the Senate Rules Committee is going to work on the proposal, and there's another proposal on the table that I think is also an interesting one, which, since John served in the House and Senate, to name the entire visitor center complex where all the public comes into the Capitol after Senator McCain. I could easily vote for either of those proposals.
Right, but what about with Richard Russell? Is this something that his name should be on there or not?
Well, here's what I think. I don't think you need to make a decision that it's permanent for all time. I mean, here's the rule in the Capitol, for example, about statues. Every state gets 2 statues. And you have to get the design approved by the architect, but the statue can be changed after 10 years. The original idea was that names would change. You honor different people over different periods of time. So honoring Senator Russell is fine, but I'd be very, very happy voting for that building, in which my office is John McCain's office suite, to be the McCain office building.
Mr. Stewart.
Well, at least you could say you got something done, I suppose. I mean, here's the thing about these statues. It keeps bringing them up. Democrats keep bringing it up. Media keeps bringing it up. This is what it comes down to. He wants to take them down. I think they should stay up. I think it's a matter of history. But we got to focus on what really matters in this country. We got a lot of problems. And when you got somebody who's so bitterly partisan, who's deliberately trying to cause a racial divide in this country at every single opportunity, trying to demonize Virginians who simply are proud of their heritage, proud of their past, no, that's not right. That's not where we need to go. Aren't you sick of the division? Aren't you sick of everybody obsessing over these issues of race all of the time? Leave the name on the building and move on to other things. We need to protect our history, leave the names alone, leave the statues alone, and let's go and fix our health care. Let's secure the border. Let's make sure that we have an economy that is thriving. Let's build some infrastructure. That's what we need to be focusing in on.
30 seconds, Senator.
Bitterly partisan? Corey, don't put your bitterness off on me. If you're looking at the world through bitter-colored glasses, it's you. It's not others. Bitterly partisan to vote to change from a Democratic name to name my building after a Republican senator? Is that bitterly partisan? No. John McCain deserves to be honored and recognized. He's an American hero. I had the pleasure to serve with him. He was my Armed Services Committee chair. I have the office that he was in for 20 years. If anybody deserves to have something named after him on Capitol Hill, it's John McCain.
Aaron Gilchrist for the next question.
Chairman Stewart, you mentioned Confederate statues. You support having them in Virginia, and you believe that every undocumented immigrant arrested should be deported. Minority groups have taken issue with some of your positions. In a state where more than 30% of the population are racial minorities, how do you convince those voters that you will be a senator who will represent them too?
I've been leading as the at-large chairman of the second largest locality in Virginia, Prince William County, for 12 years. It's also the first majority-minority community in all of Northern Virginia. And I've been doing it, and I've been elected and re-elected there countywide 4 times. Now, if I were all these things that the left-wing media and Senator Kaine and the Democrats say I am, I would never have been to that position. I never would have gotten elected and re-elected. I know how to get things done. And this obsession with race, look, folks, the problems in our country are not due to racial differences. They're not due to race. And we're not going to solve the problems in this country by focusing in on race the way that some would like to do. We need to get together. We need to take away that hyphen. We're all Americans. Let's get together and focus on what we agree on. That's what I've been able to do on a local level, to focus on the things we agree on, building roads, improving schools, etc., not these racially divisive issues that Senator Kaine likes to focus in on.
Go ahead, Senator, 6 seconds.
Corey, when you choose as your campaign theme, take Virginia back, you send a message to people, especially racial minorities. When you bash immigrants, you send a message. When you question whether President Obama's birth certificate was a forgery, you send a very divisive message. When you skip a Prince William County Board of Supervisors meeting where they're discussing opioid addiction to go campaign for Roy Moore in Alabama after he had been outed as somebody who preyed on teenage girls and hearkened back to days gone by, you are sending a message. Everything you do, when you pal around with Jason Kessler or Paul Nealon, noted white supremacists, and you choose to associate with them, you send a message. This isn't about the divisiveness of others. It's about the choices that you make.
There he goes again.
30 seconds.
There he goes again. Reading race into everything. Everything. You know, it's damaging. It's damaging to this country. He's okay with discriminating against Asian Americans. Asian Americans in this country, when they're trying to go to a good school, Harvard, Yale, Tech, UVA, they have to score on average more than 270 points higher than other students to get into the same schools. That's not right.
Okay.
We have to end state-sponsored racism and stop this obsession with race.
I have never supported discrimination against Asian Americans in any line of work, education,
You're
or
okay with
public
using
life.
race as a factor in college admissions, aren't you? Aren't you? What's the answer?
Do you want to respond?
You want to answer to that?
Sure. I
Jason.
believe that college classes should look like society looks.
So discriminate against Asians in order to make sure that happens?
I am against discrimination against anybody.
Well, that's what's happening right now. Why do they have to have 270 points higher in the
Do I get to answer it? Do I get to
Mr.
answer
Stewart,
the question?
let him finish, and then we're going to move on to another question.
Of course, we want to see Asian Americans completely well represented in every area of public life. Elected office, in our universities, in every area of public life. That's why I put so many Asian Americans in my cabinet when I was governor. That's what we need to do. Everyone needs to see themselves so that they can have role models and know that there's a path to success for them.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let's move on to the next question, next issue that I'd like to get to. Mark Rozelle with the next question on health care.
Great. Senator, what do you believe should be the future of the Affordable Care Act, particularly in light of the Commonwealth of Virginia's decision to join the Medicaid expansion program? And what changes would you urge Democrats to make if they win control of Congress in November?
I support the Affordable Care Act. I support Medicaid expansion. My opponent opposes and wants to repeal the Affordable Care Act and opposes Medicaid expansion. What would I do? What are the next steps? First, we need to stop the Trump administration's sabotage against the Affordable Care Act, cutting out the individual mandate, cutting down enrollment periods, cutting down marketing to enable people to enroll. The insurance companies filing for rates in Virginia are saying their rates are going up because the administration is trying to sabotage the program, and President Trump even brags about it himself. I couldn't get it done by votes, but I'm trying to kill it anyway. What we need to do is first stop the sabotage, and then second, my proposal, Medicare X, that Medicare would offer for Americans to buy, if they choose, an insurance policy that covers the Obamacare essential health benefits. That would be very strong. But we shouldn't eliminate the ACA and gut Medicaid, which my opponent wants to do.
Senator, that didn't sound very bipartisan to me. What happened to you? You've changed. You've changed a lot. Once upon a time, when you first came into office as governor, a lot of us on the local level thought we could work together with you. But you've become a very bitter partisan figure. You're against everything the president is trying to do. Now, let's take a look at what he wants to do. He and Bernie Sanders want Medicare for all. You know what that really means? He wants to take it all out of your wallets. It's a $32 trillion cost over 10 years. That would mean that your income taxes would have to double. How many of you out there are willing to pay double your federal income taxes right now? How many of you could afford it? And last time they said they were going to fix it, they said our premiums were going to go down. They went up by 105%. Americans didn't get more. That's not for all. That's less for all. You said deductibles were going to go down. They went up. We got less. Americans are getting less under your program.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. 30 seconds, Senator.
When Corey Stewart says he wants to repeal the Affordable Care Act and supports plans to take health insurance away from millions or gut Medicaid, you better believe him, because that's what he did in Prince William County. He tried to eliminate the public health department, and he cut public health funding by 35% when disease was going up. And no, Corey, I'm not a co-sponsor of Bernie's single-payer bill. I think Americans should have the option to buy on the exchange a policy that Medicare would create. And because Medicare doesn't have to cover a profit margin or pay return to shareholders or pay taxes, it would be an affordable additional choice for every American.
Thank you, Senator. Julie with the next question.
Chairman Stewart, Virginia is poised to become the 38th state to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment, first approved by Congress back in 1972. If that happens, the ball is then back in Congress's court. Where do you stand on this issue, and should the ERA be part of the Constitution?
Well, no, it shouldn't. And let me tell you why. You know, it failed many, many years ago. And of course, these left-wing liberals like Tim Kaine keep trying to bring up a failed idea. You know why it failed last time? Because what the ERA would have meant back then was that women would have been subject to the draft. They would have been drafted into the military, you know, whether they had a choice or not. They wouldn't have had a choice. And today it would mean that potentially just lawsuits. We already have federal, state, and local laws against discrimination. We need better enforcement of those laws. But adding the ERA just is good for the litigators, good for the lawyers, and I'm a lawyer. But it's bad for America. It's bad for America. It would mean that men would be able to sue to get into women's athletic programs. Do we want that? Think about the unintended consequences of adopting this amendment before we do it, because it would have very bad ramifications for this country.
60 seconds, Senator.
Good for lawyers, good for litigators. How about good for women? How about good for women? Of course the ERA should be ratified. I hope Virginia is the state that puts it over. What do we have to fear from putting the equality of women in a constitution when we are a nation that has embraced as our North Star the Jeffersonian equality principle? Of course we should do it. And your parade of all these worries about lawsuits, I think women should be valued. You know, I don't think Dr. Ford should be attacked and called a bunch of crap when she puts allegations of serious sexual assault on the table. I don't think her allegation should be demeaned as the equivalent of pulling somebody's pigtails. I don't think you should have gone down to campaign for Roy Moore to be a United States Senator after he had been outed as a predator, serial predator of young teenage girls. These actions do not suggest respect for women, and that makes your opposition to the ERA pretty easy to understand.
30 seconds, Mr. Stewart.
Well, let's talk about women. Let's talk about women very close to home. Right in the body that you serve in, Senator, the United States Senate. 268 allegations of sexual harassment against you and the other members of the United States Senate and the House of Representatives. Why hasn't that come to light?
It has.
Why hasn't it? No, it has not come to light,
You know
Senator.
the number. You had to get it somewhere.
268.
I've read about 100 articles.
Senator,
let
me let Mr. Stewart finish his 30, and I'll give you a chance to respond.
Like every other member of the Senate and the House, is trying to sweep this under the rug. Meanwhile, you're trying to talk to us about focusing on sexual harassment that's going on with a judge 36 years ago, potentially. Meanwhile, you're not willing to clean your own house and to disclose the identities of the members of the Senate and the House who have sexually harassed and potentially
Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Been predators up there in Congress.
Senator, I'll give you 30 seconds.
It should all be disclosed. And when the Senate Ethics Committee was refusing to disclose the material that the House Ethics Committee had disclosed, it was my pressure that led the Ethics Committee to meet and decide to put the facts out. If there's additional facts that need to be disclosed, hey, let's have it all out there. But you cannot stand here after you've been accusing Dr. Ford and name-calling her, after you've just said that you don't support the Equal Rights Amendment, and now pretend that you're a champion of women.
Thank you, Senator. Aaron's got the next question.
Senator Kaine, as you know, Northern Virginia made a strong push to become a finalist for Amazon's second headquarters and the thousands of jobs that would come with it. But some are concerned that Amazon would draw talent away from existing businesses, hike already high housing costs, and further strain roads and metro. Where do you stand on bringing Amazon to Northern Virginia?
Aaron, I hope we get it. I want Virginia to win any competition we're in. That's why when I was governor, even in a tough time, I was so proud that Forbes named us America's best state for business every year I was governor. Pew Center on State's best managed state, Education Week best state to raise a child. If there's a competition, I want Virginia to win it. Now, will there be challenges? There will be. Just like Senator Warner, you were in the Senate when we did the BRAC round in 2005, and we added a lot of critical missions to Fort Belvoir. Was that good? Sure. Were there challenges? Yes. And we will have to pull together and find funding for transportation, pull together to do novel strategies around housing. But the talent, while there will be competition for talent, and everybody in this room knows it, it will also be a huge magnet for talent, for talented individuals, for talented institutions, for talented companies. So I hope that Virginia is the winner of this competition, and we can figure out the problems if we work together.
Mr. Stewart.
That's all he's got to offer. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You know, as chairman of the Board of Supervisors, I work together with the rest of my board. You know how you build economic growth? You give businesses and residents adequate public infrastructure. That means roads and schools. You streamline regulations on our businesses. I've cut down in half, the board has, the amount of time that it takes to open or expand a business in my community. $1 billion worth of new roads. That's what I've been able to do. And we've kept taxes lower today than they were, and when adjusted for inflation, 12 years ago. That's what made Prince William County #1 in job growth, #3 in the United States of America. And that's what we have to do on the federal level. The federal tax cut that was passed without his vote, because he votes against everything that President Trump does, has resulted in a 22-year record for blue-collar wages going up, a 52-year low in unemployment, and he's opposed to it.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. 30 seconds.
Tax bill, what a missed opportunity. We needed to do it for the first time, but deep permanent tax cuts for corporations and tiny temporary expiring tax cuts for people, wrong priority. Added $2 trillion to the debt. We could have done so much better. We could have done so much better. Corey, you talk about your economic track record, but look, when I was governor, we got Hilton to move to Virginia. We got Northrop Grumman, SAIC, CSC, Midwest-Vaco, Volkswagen. All of those who chose Northern Virginia, they all chose Fairfax.
Thanks. And he didn't build a single road.
Not a single
road
let me
was built or funded under your administration.
Not a single one of the businesses chose Prince William because you were embroiling your county in controversy.
You guys are going to get penalized here because I'm trying to get a couple more questions in. 30 seconds with the next answer, if you could. Mark Roselle.
Great. Mr. Stewart, what is the proper role of government in boosting economic prospects in Southwest Virginia, where coal is dying due to cheaper alternative energy sources? And what do you see as the future for that region?
So Senator Kaine went down to Southwest Virginia when he was running for governor in 2005, and he told those folks that he was going to support them. He was going to support the coal industry. And then he betrayed them. And he voted for all those regulations under the Obama administration that shut down coal and all those jobs. All those jobs. And you go down there and you look at those folks and you see boarded up shops, you see people who are struggling and they want to work and they want to work hard. Coal is an important part of our nation's energy resources. We have to use it, and it also provides jobs for us as well.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Senator.
Corey, you need to get out more. When I was governor, we permitted and built in Virginia City the cleanest coal plant in the United States, and I was proud to work on that. And we opened data centers in Lebanon and Russell County, big data centers to move high-tech jobs into Russell County so folks in Southwest Virginia could have
against coal then?
And we're working on important issues now in Southwest Virginia. We're working on expanding career and
why'd you vote against coal?
We're working on expanding career and technical education. And why do you think the United Mine Workers support me and not you? They know that I know what I'm doing when it comes to coal, and I'm not just somebody who runs my mouth.
You're shutting it down, Senator.
All right, gentlemen. I'm going to take the privilege here and have the final question. I'm going to return to where we began, which is tomorrow's hearing. Let's be realistic. A lot of us are watching this and are worried that it's going to turn into a national train wreck. What can senators do on each side of the aisle tomorrow to avoid this national train wreck? And is the biggest mistake the filibuster? Senator Kaine?
I think senators need to approach all the witnesses with respect. And I say all the witnesses. I don't think this is just a matter for Judge Kavanaugh and Dr. Ford. If we're going to be respectful of the seriousness of the allegation, I think you have to hear from Ms. Ramirez and Ms. Swetnick. I think you need to subpoena Mark Judge to come, and there may be other witnesses as well. The most respectful thing to do is treat people with respect, but bring all the witnesses before to suggest you undertake the seriousness of this. Remember, our children are watching. If an allegation of serious sexual assault gets swept under the rug, it will make it harder for people who are suffering sexual assault to come out and seek help. Let's hear from everybody, do the FBI investigation that should be done, and do it in a respectful manner. That's what a deliberative body like the Senate should do.
Mr. Stewart.
If the Senate treated each other and other members the way that they're treating Judge Kavanaugh, they'd all be in jail or getting counseling. 268 charges of harassment, sexual harassment against you and other members of the United States Senate and Congress, and you won't even disclose it. Don't the American people have a right to know where there's $17 million in hush money that is gone to hush up these women who had legitimate claims? And those weren't 36 years ago. They were just last year. Don't we have a right to know who among you is on that list? Who among you has been charged and accused of sexual harassment? Who among you? Isn't it a right, isn't it for the protection of the young women in particular who are working up on Capitol Hill that we have a right to know who's a sexual predator, who's a sexual harasser? We have a situation where the sexual harassers are accusing Judge Kavanaugh of sexual harassment.
Many of the facts are out on the table because I pushed the Senate Ethics Committee to release what the House Ethics Committee had released. It was true. It was true that the Senate was slower than the House on this.
Slower, it hasn't been done.
No, and so we pushed for this information to come out, and much information is out. Scores and scores of information, but if there's more information out, I want it all out. I want it all out. But for you to stand here after you've called Dr. Ford a bunch of crap, after you've suggested her claim of sexual assault as well, it's like pulling somebody's pigtail.
All right, guys, I'm going to give you each 30 seconds. Please answer my filibuster question. Should it come back? Would we be in this position if the filibuster were in place? Senator Kaine, 30 seconds. Mr. Stewart, 30 seconds.
I think the 60-vote threshold is the right rule for legislation.
So if Democrats get the Senate, you're going to support bringing it back?
No, just 60-vote threshold is right for legislation. 50-vote threshold is right for nominations.
You're done. You do not believe we should have the Supreme Court higher threshold?
The reason I don't is this. A president who gets elected does have a mandate to fill positions. And with the 60-vote threshold, Chuck, as you know, what you had is agencies like the Medicaid Medicare agency. Right. The biggest budget in the nation went without a confirmed administrator for 6.5 years. 60 votes for legislation, 50 votes for nominations.
Mr. Stewart?
They're getting nothing done. They're getting nothing done. The only thing that the Senate has gotten done is the president's tax cut that has resulted in a 52-year low in unemployment. And he even opposed that. He opposes every single thing the president proposes. Everything. Even in your opposition, even if it hurts Virginia, even if it hurts our military, even if it hurts our military personnel, even if it hurts the average men and women in businesses who need and depend upon those tax cuts.
All right. Thank you, sir. It is it for our questions. Well done to both of you. And now to Chairman Stewart, you have a 1-minute closing statement.
Well, thank you very much. Again, I want to thank all of you for attending this, and I want to thank my wife. It's been a long, long road, and I want to let you all know something. I know I'm controversial. I know I stir things up. I've got members of the Board of Supervisors here, and they know it's true. But we've been able to come together in a way that the United States Senate has never been able to do so under Senator Kaine, because he's an automatic no to everything that the president proposes. On January 19th, when the president proposed a 355-ship Navy, Senator Kaine voted no. When the president proposed to increase the salary and the housing allowance for our military, Senator Kaine voted no. He votes no against the president out of spite. He's still hurting from 2016. We have no room for that. He's been voting no against the president, no against you, no against Virginia, and that is why on November 6th, I'm asking you to vote no to Senator Kaine and vote yes to Virginia's future. Thank you very much.
Senator Kaine, your final.
Virginians, in my 24 years of being in elected life and getting around the state, are positive and welcoming and inclusive and innovative people. And my theme of a Virginia that works for all is not just an expression of what I've tried to do, but it's an expression of what I hear from Virginians. Let's pull together and do good things for our Commonwealth and our country. That's how I've led all along. That's how I've led in the Senate, getting bill after bill passed. Corey may thinks it's nothing to build a 355-ship Navy or battle opioids. He thinks that it's nothing to expand career and technical education or medical research, but Virginians think it's something. And I also know this about Virginia. When a Corey Stewart says, take Virginia back, Virginians don't want to go back. There's nothing in the rearview mirror that looks better to Virginia than what we can see in the windshield going forward. If you will support me, continue to support me, I will continue to work for that Virginia that works for all, together with you, to build accomplishments and help people's lives in every corner of this Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Stewart, and thank you to the Northern Virginia, the Schar School at George Mason, Northern Virginia Tech Council, my colleagues at NBC4 for making tonight's debate possible, and of course, once again, to Senator Kaine, Corey Stewart for both agreeing to the participation and having a spirited and lively discussion. Thanks also to our great panel, Aaron, Julie, and Mark. Stay with News 4 and NBCWashington.com for continuing coverage of Decision 2018. And please join us for the Facebook Live program right now. And by the way, don't forget, you get to vote on November 6th. If you don't vote, you don't get to complain. Have a good election.